Well, it's bad enough trying to shoot in the wind with this camera. I got a helicopter that keeps going away and coming back, so it may come back, so I'll try to talk over it. Anyway, I've repositioned this piece of work. It was rotated clockwise 90 degrees and put back on the saw. So now I have a factory edge, and a factory edge towards me. This side over here is marked to be 4, and this will be number 5. And this is being cut off at 41.5 inches in length. The final dimension is going to be 41, but I had some wiggle because these are going to be legs, so I'm going to go ahead and just rip it right here. Need to fix myself. Okay, well, I'd mentioned out of one of the pieces I wanted to keep a section intact, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that out, and I'm just going to try to show you the dimensions here. I don't know if they're going to show up. The first thing that I did was on piece number 2 is the one I'm using. I've got a factory edge here and a factory edge here. I've come in 16 inches and gone up 11 to right here, and then over here on this side I went up 17.25 and came in 13.5 and then came down and hit that point right there. I'm going to take a couple of these out freehand with the skill saw. I didn't leave myself too much room in here, so I'm going to jigsaw this portion out. And I can't totally support this piece, so I am going to be supporting it with my hand. I just need to nip out a little bit here, and we'll have these in 2 pieces. And that's good enough. Well, alright, we're getting ready to make some cuts. You're probably going to see the camera bounce around because I'm out in my makeshift shop, and when I walk around on the floor my tripod moves, so you'll just have to deal with that. I'm gonna address each one of these as we cut them and numbered them from 1 to 5, and then we'll knock them down beyond that. And then each piece is going to get relabeled so I can call them out later. Now we're going to start with number 1, which is the tabletop, and it's 28.5 by 21. We've already done the 28.5 in length, so I've got my rip fence set to 21 inches, and this is ready to run through. Now this is going to be renamed part 4, so I'm going to go ahead and write 4 on here and get rid of my 1. So here we go. Alright, well hopefully you can tell that little sliver that came off. Like I said, I'm cutting things tight, so I've left myself very little allowance. So this piece is finished, ready to be checked off, and we'll move on to number 2. Okay, now I have board 2. This is the orientation where it was cut, and I took this section out right here. There's a factory edge right here. I'm turning this 90 degrees counterclockwise, and I'm going to run this through at 10 5/8, and we'll further break this down. This other piece will become another part. Okay, the piece that just came off that was sitting here is now going to be ridden against the fence, and I have my saw set for 3 inches. I'm going to run this through twice, and then we'll mark out these pieces. Almost made a mistake. When I cut this section out right here, I came in for these two pieces 13 1/2 and cut that line. On the diagram here, when I looked at it, it said 13, so I gave myself a 1/2 inch. But it's cut off in the picture here. When I read the actual dimension of it, its actual finished length is 13 1/2. So if you guys are going to follow my instruction, if you cut this little section out here, make that 14 inches so you can cut it back to 13 1/2. So I got lucky. Now I did have a little bit of scrap. I could have remade these, but these are now going to be marked as pieces 11, and they're going to be 13.5 in length. Which they already are, aside from me taking that little bit off there. So these are ready to set aside. Okay, here's the original piece we cut to 10 5/8. I'm rotating it, putting the factory edge to the fence, and I'm cutting these 2 1/2 inches, and there's going to be 6 passes here. Okay, these are all going to be part number 3, and they should be finished. Now when you guys are working with table saws, I'm sure you know to be safe, especially if you're working close to the blade. You know, I use push sticks, this, that, and the other, but I still work close to the blade. I'm just very careful, and I'm always aware, so leave me alone on that one. Alright, well this setup I'm not going to be able to show because I need to work around the saw where the camera is. This is actually piece number 3 that we cut out, and it's already 72 inches in length. I've been trying to minimize the saw changes of the fence, and I already had a 10 5/8, and I should have jumped and ran this through once and then jumped to the next one, but I didn't. So this is going to go through at 10 5/8 with the factory edge towards the fence. I'll get reset up and I'll do 2 3 5/8 pieces off of it as well, and I'll just have a little sliver of scrap. Now this, the first pass that I'm going to make, the 10 5/8, is going to be labeled part 1. And then the other 2 pieces that are coming off are going to be both part 2. So part 2 and part 2. So that's how they're going to be called out later. I just wanted to reiterate and illustrate how tight my measurements were. I just got through ripping those pieces through, and this is what I'm left with, about 1/8 of an inch, and it's a weak 1/8 at that, so it was tight. Well, now I'm going to find original piece number 4, and I've got my fence set to 3.5 inches, and I'm going to run 8 passes through there, starting with the factory edge. I won't be able to show this either. And then without changing the setup, I'm going to find piece 5 and run 2 strips off that at 3.5, and then I'll break these down to length after I'm finished. I was getting ready to run this, and dawned on me I didn't tell you which way I was going to do it, even though I said factory edge. This is 41.5 inches in length. That's the way it's going to go through, and we're going to cut our 3.5s off this way, all 8 of them. Okay, well, all the leg pieces have been cut, and for reference they were all marked as part number 12, and they're going to be finally cut eventually to 41 inches in length. Now I have piece 5 up here. I'm still at 3.5 inches on my fence, and I need to take 2 passes at 3.5, and I'll break these down into their specific dimensions later. But the way it was cut was this, in this orientation. I have rotated clockwise the original piece, and I'll run it through twice. I'm basically taking these off this factory edge, and then I'll reset to 4.5, and I'll make these passes. Now the ones that are coming off right now are going to be labeled 9 and 10 respectively later, so I'm just going to set them aside. Well, I went ahead and labeled these 2 that are coming off 9 9 10 10. 9 is 18 7/8, and 10 is 12 inches. And we'll cut these to length later. Okay, here's the 5 pieces of 4 1/4. I went ahead and marked these out. The first 2 up here are both 5s, and they're both 28.5 inches long. The next 2 are both 8, and they're 27 inches long. And the last one right here is actually cut. It's going to be cut into 2 pieces. One end is going to be number 6, 19.5, and the other end is going to be number 7 at 13 inches. So I believe we have everything cut to width now. Now we need to break things down into length, and I'll describe what I'm going to do there. Okay, well, I'm starting with part 5, and I just kind of lined up the edges. I'm going to true these edges up, and I'm going to gang cut these. So I've got a clamp down here. I'm going to cut from this side last. So I'm just going to move this down here and make my cut. Just trimming the edge off just a little bit, and that's all we're going to do. And these are going to be 28.5 inches in length. So I'll just cut those off right there. Those 2 can be checked off the list.